Share the screen.
Okay.
And it's going to be the entire screen.
And do I just point to you? Are you in here with me?
I'm going to sit right over there.
Okay. You can move my bag.
Okay, we share Adjunct, Michelle.
We share which one?
We share Autumn.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Hello. In 2007, I finished my master's degree in communication at Boise State University. And right after my thesis defense, the department chair at that time and my chair at my committee said, how would you like to teach for Boise State in communication? And I said, great, that sounds wonderful. I just left 20 years of industry. I'm so excited. This is perfect. I had thought about teaching kindergarten or public speaking to high school students. And now I was just going to pursue higher education. So I walked into a room with Rebecca Robideau, who currently is the person who oversees the Communication 101 instructors at Boise State, and she gave me a textbook, and she gave me some scheduling. So I knew that on this date I'd be teaching a section of Com 101, and then a few weeks later it became another section of Com 101. Does this sound familiar to you? Right? We didn't really talk about learning outcomes. We didn't talk about resources that were available to me. As a matter of fact, at that point, if you knew anything about Blackboard in 2007, you were kind of a golden child. If you think back, we were still using some of those slick little overhead projector and the slides that you would put into your classroom and get really dark so students could see. You'd have all of your notes on there, somewhat archaic. So that was the introduction to my higher ed teaching career. And I fast forward to today as I was preparing with my partners in crime, who I'm going to emulate all three of us today. Todd Morton is out with the shoulder surgery, and Sean Hunter from Boise State is out for his military summer training. And so I'll try to go into role model and try to take on their vocalics, try to take on the way they hold their body as I present their components of the presentation. But I was thinking about my adjunct experience, because this is the Treasure Valley Adjunct Conference. And I think it's important that all of us, whether we're in administration, we're somebody who oversees faculty, whether we're full-time faculty or part-time faculty, that it's really important that we understand the components of onboarding, orienting new faculty to the institution and to what the requirements of the position are. And so Todd and Sean and I have done that in a couple of different ways over the last 2 years. And John's here, which I'm really happy to see. John has shared some of those moments with us right at last year's summit held at Boise State. You were there, weren't you?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. And so maybe you can even answer some questions or give perspective. So I'm going to preview today. What I'd like to discuss first is our summit and how the summit was conceptualized for primarily adjunct faculty, but also full-time faculty and those administrators who are in the Department of Communication at Boise State University and Department of Communication at College of Western Idaho, and then our friends in the Bachelor of Applied Science and General Studies who often take communication classes and who students we serve, and how we came together to try to provide the best learning outcomes and resources available to all of the people involved in that. And then I'm going to talk about how Sean and Todd and I have worked on our outreach. And so if you're familiar, Sean's the director of outreach. And so he ensures staffing and course delivery at a lot of various locations for Boise State, including Mountain Home Air Force Base, close to CSI in Twin Falls, this location, Gowan Field, I believe that's all of them. And then the online obviously is part of that. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Okay. All right. So that's where we're going to head. And then I'm going to end today. I want to, if we have time, give some onboarding practices and some professional development practices that I either share with adjunct faculty so that if they want to move into full-time teaching, that they know how they can cultivate some of the experience and learning opportunities that will make them impactful for employers to look at in the full-time capacity, and how I orient new adjunct faculty to my program so that you can hopefully take that information with you. So Todd Norton, again, Boise State Department Chair of Communication. And let's see, what would Todd look like if I was Todd today? Does anybody know Todd? Raise your hand. Great. So if I go out of the Todd role, just let me know and I'll try to get back into it. Like an ex-firefighter, burly kind of a guy, right? So the summit was originally Todd's brainchild, and last year it was quite successful. We had a lot of faculty from College of Western Idaho attend, both part-time and full-time, as well as many of the adjunct faculty at Boise State who also teach at the College of Western Idaho, and many of the full-time faculty as well. And what we saw as a vision for the summit, and I believe came to fruition, were the areas of curriculum, pedagogy, and programmatic goals. So a lot of times, if you go back to my story, that first moment where I was hired as an adjunct faculty, note that I was given a textbook. I didn't really have a sample syllabus. I was given times that I should teach. At that point, there weren't any COM 101 classes offered online or hybrid, so I knew it was face-to-face the entire time, and that's pretty much what I knew. So I spent some time talking to Rebecca. She didn't naturally share with me. I'm sure she does now because we've all come a long way. So I don't mean to diminish that, but now I would say, what do I need to do? Well, they all need to give 2 speeches, one inform, one persuade. How long should they be? She'd give me some time frames. I needed to video record those speeches, and then the rest was kind of match up to the textbook. In academia, we do that a lot. I think we rely on textbooks to lead the pedagogy instead of the textbook supporting the pedagogy. And so we've tried to transform over the last 12 years, and in the last 9 years as program lead and department chair at CWI, I've worked diligently to try to make that a more robust process for the adjuncts. So we looked at the curriculum and we said 2 things. Which courses are CWI and Boise State teaching that are the same? That would be a COM 101, a COM 271, which is intro to media. Teresa, have you taught that class? You teach interpersonal and leadership. So we teach interpersonal as well. So if we have somebody that we're putting a lot of support into teaching a particular class, why not cross-apply that experience, and they can deliver that course at Boise State and CWI. So we looked at the courses and the curriculum. We also spent some time having those conversations with those who teach in the media arts, with those who teach interpersonal, with those who teach in media, to discuss some of their best practices in teaching, of course, right? And also, what are some of the learning outcomes at the course level? So at the College of Western Idaho, we've developed curriculum guides, which are more in-depth guide to a class's learning outcomes and sub-learning outcomes than you would see on a syllabus. And at first it was a lot of work and quite painful, honestly, to put those together. But now I found that, at least for most of our adjuncts, and I have a couple in here who can be totally honest with me and say, do I love them or do I dislike them? How do I feel about them? And I really like them when I have a curriculum guide and I say, okay, I'm not teaching a textbook. I'm not the speaker of a textbook. I'm the expert in this field, and this textbook now becomes a support, an ancillary component of teaching. Does that make sense? So we're flipping that around and moving to what do we actually need to know and what do students need to learn in this course. So that takes us to pedagogy. And we can start talking about Boise State, for example, has a really robust online training program. CWI has a really great online training program and a hybrid training program. So if instructors who are specializing in online for extended studies, for outreach, except for example at Boise State, and they also deliver those courses at CWI, do we need to make them retrain? How do we adapt those skill sets together in those learning moments, right? So Todd and I have a lot of conversations as department chairs, and I see that several of you are in here as administrators. So I would suggest to you, and I'm also going to advocate for adjunct and full-time faculty to be more robust in your communication, rather than sitting back, is to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and say, how can we collaborate? So Todd and I will have those conversations, and we'll say, so-and-so was trained at Boise State on online, they're rocking it. I'm like, great. I'm gonna ask them if they'll teach online at CWI. And then maybe I have somebody like Teresa Coons, I'm gonna pick on you since you're in my department. Teresa is really great with students who are really afraid of their first semester at college. She's really fantastic with those students who may be first generation or have some sort of learning accommodations, etc. And she's really great at delivering hybrid courses. So when we have cohorts like Joy Palmer, who's the chair of English at CWI, right there, and communication and our first semester experience, we offer some cohorts where a student can take a hybrid back to back to back in those courses. And they say, I'm not going to put a full-timer in there when Teresa's the best candidate to work with those students, and she's so great with hybrids, right? So that communication from chair to chair and administrator, I cannot overemphasize the importance of that. And for adjunct faculty to get in front of both chairs and advocate for themselves in that way. So it has allowed us during these meetings to look at pedagogy and best practices. One component that came out of that that's related to pedagogy and curriculum was that we realized when students leave as a sophomore at CWI and they begin their junior level classes at Boise State, that they need to immediately be adept at APA writing and academic writing. They need to know how to write in third person. They need to understand some empirical data collection. They need to know how to write a lit review, right? And so the first couple of years CWI was open, our students were getting smashed. They go over their junior year and they weren't ready for that. And the instructors would say, yeah, you missed 3 APA citations, there's errors, you failed this, right? So we immediately were able to look at our pedagogy and curriculum and say, we need to prepare students by taking 2 of our required courses and integrating an APA research paper in those. So now our feedback from the Boise State Department is your students are above our students because you purposely incorporated these, right? But that was chair to chair communication, instructor to instructor. So that's another outcome of our summit. And then programmatic goals. So as we built our new curriculum at CWI, and how many of you teach at CWI? Several of you. And how many teach at Boise State? And how many teach at both? And how many are administrators? Sweet. And how many are teachers and administrators? Okay, now I know my audience. Should have asked that already. I just didn't want it to mess with my open with impact. You know how calm people are. We don't want to ask the questions right up front. You might get an answer you don't want to hear and then you mess up for the rest of the presentation. But our programmatic goals, we would look at those and say, in our programmatic goals, such as media arts, was just becoming a thing at Boise State 2 or 3 years ago. A new curriculum, and now it's in the name of the department, Communication and Media Arts. We only had communication coming from the CSI curriculum, and we said we need media arts. We need to emulate Boise State. 90% of our students are transferring there, so it makes sense that we create a 2+2 agreement, and I'll talk about that briefly. Important for adjuncts to know as well, but we basically said we're going to take all of the course numbering and the course titles that Boise State offers, and we're going to emulate that. If it's a required course for con or a required course for media arts, that's going to be our required courses here. Doesn't that make sense? 90% of our students transfer. We want them to have their freshman and sophomore level courses finished, and then they have their additional courses that are electives in that major or electives outside. So we came up with the 2+2, all of the chairs and our deans and our former AVP at CWI. And we said, we know we have articulation agreements, which are these big agreements between institutions that say, I know you're accredited, I'll take your credits, we'll transfer. But the problem was that the students' transcripts would head to the other institution upon transfer, and the registrar, and you had to look at those and decide if it was the same class. They're not all having the same title, right? They don't all have the same prefix. And so it became convoluted, and students said, so-and-so class was not accepted, it's an elective, and I have to take this other one. We didn't want that to happen. So at least once a year, Todd and I sit down and we go over our agreements. And if they make changes, which of course he got there and changed all the media arts to different prefixes. But we said our 2+2 and it didn't change. We still knew what this equaled this at Boise State. Why do I say this? Whether you're an adjunct, and many of you are teaching in this room, look like about 90% of you are teaching. When a student has you on their schedule as their professor, their teacher, do they know if you're an adjunct or a full-time faculty? Most of the time they don't. They know, is this teacher going to show up on time? Am I going to click with them? Am I learning from this instructor? So unless you say, I'm a brand new adjunct, or I've been teaching for 100 years, and you're so lucky to get me, or whichever approach you use. I hope you don't use either of those actually, but we've all heard them, right?
I usually always let the students know that I let the students know that I'm adjunct.
Oh, you do? Okay. And so you can tell them, this is my part-time gig, but you don't necessarily have to tell them. All they care about is that you're their instructor. And I tell the adjunct faculty all the time in my department, they don't care if they have Michelle Bennett or Teresa Kuntz or Joy Palmer or an adjunct. What they care about is, do I have the best experience? Are you preparing me for my other classes? Am I learning? Do I feel like I can approach you, right? So I feel like whether you're part-time or full-time, we're all a team. We don't hide things. We all need to be transparent. We need to show our colors. We need every person working on that team to show up with their A game every time for every student, right? And whether you choose to do that full-time and take on other responsibilities at the institution is up to you. But you're not going to be treated differently because you're part-time or full-time, other than you don't have that extra responsibility that's on your thing, professional development or service to the college, etc. Does that make sense? Okay. So this was our goal that Todd and I have, and we revisit that every year. We planned to have our second summit this year, and because of his shoulder surgery, etc., we postponed our spring summit this year to our fall summit. So if you're not in communication, how does this help you? I think it helps you if you're an administrator to think about the relationships you have across the Treasure Valley. If you're NNU or you're Boise State or CWI, that you could reach in and have summits with your transfer partners. That it only makes your institution better, which serves your students better. I don't think it has to just be an administrator who advocates for that. I feel like best ideas often come from part-time faculty. So my goal today is, regardless of why you're here today, that you think about what could my role be in enhancing learning for our students. Now I'm going to be Sean Hunter. Sean Hunter is out at the desert being trained right now. And I'm a little afraid to be Sean Hunter right now if he's in the desert, because I'm not in the best shape right now, but watch out, summer's almost here, right? So I have the same goals listed. Why do I have these, and why are they listed under outreach? We've done some really cool things at this very location between CWI and Boise State. A student, yeah, go ahead.
Hold on 1 second, I'm just gonna click on.
Okay.
She says, I'm really confused why you're talking about Sean's shape right now and how he's in good shape.
Oh, he's in military training right now in the desert.
You're talking about the body?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's on the desert fighting military, and he was supposed to be here, but they called him 2 weeks early. So I'm trying to take on the characterizations of the other speakers today.
Okay.
So my attempt at humor is lost, I'm sorry. This would have been one of my best assets.
I just was trying to clarify what you meant by that. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Thank you for asking. So Sean is the director of outreach, and as I mentioned in my preview, he handles the staffing, et cetera, and the oversight of all of the auxiliary locations for Boise State, where students across Idaho could take additional courses. And we know that we have a large segment of student population in the west side of the valley, and we have students who live in the west side of the valley and traveling after work all the way down to the Boise State campus, and trying to pay for parking and find parking is probably one of the greatest challenges. So it's been very nice for our students to have free parking out here. If they live in the west side, they can take a class out here and then they're close to home when they finish up at almost 9:00 p.m. So what we did is, because I am also an adjunct for Boise State still for the last 12 years and teach a course every semester for them out here. Research methods is a required course for juniors, and senior seminar is the capstone class for seniors. And so the majority of our communication majors are transferring to Boise State. So we found it does a couple of things. I let them know that I'm going to be out here teaching their junior year and their senior year, one of those really tough research classes. And so they have this comfort knowing I'm leaving CWI and Mama Hen, right? And Mama Hen's gonna make sure that I'm still going down this pathway, because they get a lot of one-on-one attention at the community college. And so it's pretty cool. And then John Shipley, Dr. Shipley's been hired the last few semesters to teach with me out here. He came from Texas A&M. And so he offers a class each semester. And then we worked with the online program and extended studies to offer courses that are online, so that students out here can take those online classes to fill a full semester. And what that looks like is half of a class has a different prefix code than the other half of that same online class, so that Evelyn, who works out here, can hold some of those seats in that online class for these students, because online classes fill so quickly. We all know that, right? And so that's worked out really great. And then just this last year, we suggested to Todd that we go to a hybrid model out here, so that a student could come. Most of our students work during the day and take classes at night. That's the typical student out here. That they could come at 6:00 and take a class till 7:15, have a 15-minute break, and then take their second class, which would allow them 2 online classes and then 2 hybrid classes. And we do a little different at CWI than BSU, so I convinced them to do this. Instead of you come to class 1 week, someone in Boise State this week, come to class 1 week, then the next week it's online, and then you come to class the next week and that's online. At CWI, we mostly do half and half every week. So half of the content is online and half of it's face-to-face. So that's what we did. And so we do video lectures and all this, and we put it in the online portion. And then we solve problems and help them with their writing skills, etc., in our face-to-face portion. And so what that has done is allowed these students who oftentimes have children or they're working full-time to not have to drive to campus more than 1 day a week. So for example, in the fall on Monday, I teach from 6 to 7:15, and then John comes in and teaches the theory class from 7:30 to 8:45. So we teach between us research methods, the theory class, the perspectives of inquiry, and the seminar, and then they take all their elective type courses online. Yeah.
I don't want to divert your path too much, but in your research methods, because I teach business statistics over at BSU, do you use a statistical software?
I use Qualtrics.
Qualtrics?
Yeah.
Okay.
And quite honestly, without going down the pathway that you probably don't want me to go down, so I get excited about research methods, is that I found that getting the students to the point they can understand descriptive statistics and collect enough data to understand and describe their own statistical outcomes in Qualtrics, because I also have to teach them 3 qualitative methods over a semester. That's about as far as I can get. I don't use Excel because they're mostly comm majors, and we're not prone to be super mathematical.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, if they understand all these stats, this is super cool.
The advantage of Excel is so many people have it on their computer, as you know.
Yeah.
You know,
Boise State has the free subscriptions to Objects for all the students, so it's been really great. I love that.
sorry, that was probably not a question.
okay.
we were wanting to go
Yeah,
down.
we'll geek out on that kind of stuff after this lecture, right?
Okay,
Or our conversation. Anyway, so they get these 4 classes that they consider really tough, and every major has those, don't they? These are those required framework classes that are really challenging. And so we've done the hybrid model with that. We've really increased our enrollment out here. For example, this fall, most of the research method and seminar classes cap out about 20 or 25 on main campus. And I have almost 30 students in research methods, and then took on 14 seminar students simultaneously in the fall during the same time frame to finish their final projects because they need to graduate. And so John and I do some crazy things like that out here, and we just roll around and research and teach them and stuff. So why do I say that? Why do you care? Well, I'm just trying to give you some creative food that you can think about for your own programs. And as I talk about the Michelle Bennett section next, which we may as well go there, just know that all of these things are happening. So when Sean and Todd and I get together, creating the hybrids, changing the teaching model, doing things that better student involvement and make students' experience more appropriate for their lives and their challenges is what we're about. So at least once a year, and not in conjunction with the summit, usually in the fall, the 3 of us start Google Docs and then we talk to each other. And I just love it because it's all 3 of us from different parts of Boise State and from CWI working for this student who started as a scared freshman, and they had Teresa Coons and they had Joy Palmer, and then they take their major courses and they're moving on with at least one of those people to put their toe in the deep end of the pool, right? Because a lot of them are like, Boise State, oh my gosh, this is huge. And they really do see that difference in organization. So it gives them that comfort level, right? So how can you, as an administrator, how can you as an adjunct be part of that success? What can you do in your department to stand out and shine? It gives you some things to think about. We have to watch my time. Joy, can you kind of be my others? You know, I love to talk. Okay. So I wanted to take you down a little bit different pathway. And that is, what can you do, whether you're an administrator, a leader, a supervisor, or a hirer of adjunct, or whether you are the adjunct faculty or the full-time faculty, that you take ownership for the process of your own professional development in whichever role that you're in, right? So I'm going to, Joy will pass out. I brought an article. It's one of my articles I really like on onboarding. And then I'm giving you all a checklist when I meet with a new adjunct after you're hired and then do this onboarding. You probably have other items that you utilize. And if you are an adjunct and you're applying to teach online for a new institution, or you're applying at one of the Treasure Valley institutions to pick up additional work, I hope this will help you understand and advocate for yourself, create advocacy for self, so that you can have the best outcome. Great. So first I want to talk about recruiting and onboard adjunct faculty. So typically when we recruit through an announcement, right, at our institution, electronic announcement. And sometimes we get people from China and Afghanistan and all over the place if you've ever done the hiring, because we have to, once it's external, it's external. But we know that in Idaho, we don't have budgets to hire an adjunct and do the immigration paperwork for them to come work part-time in Idaho. I don't know of any institution in Idaho that could afford that. If you do, and you can as an administrator, good for you. But typically we have to hire people who work and live in Idaho or in close proximity, right? And so when we're in that situation, how can we cull through applications and find the best candidates? And if we're an adjunct, how can we place our application into a pool and stand out? I'm going to give you some of my suggestions. I think as an administrator, and I say that term loosely, because there's a lot of different administrative type of jobs, right? So let's call it the hiring manager. As the hiring manager, I think it's your responsibility to set that employee up for success by really clearly illustrating your expectations for them, but also beyond that, providing them opportunities in the organization where they can really thrive and build their resume and build their pedagogy and build their professional development. And I think this is especially true of adjunct faculty, because you can kind of get into this rut if that's what you do for a living, where you're just start looking at how many classes can I get from Boise State? How many classes can I get from CWI? How many classes can I get from NNU, right? And you're just trying to build your livelihood off of the number of sections that you have. But if you have a clear picture in your mind that you want to be full-time, or that you want to move into a full-time role in higher education, then there's some things that you're going to need to do for professional development. Would you agree? Okay, so let's have a quick conversation. We're doing pretty well on time. And we'll start with Kay. She's a dean at CWI. If you're looking at adjunct faculty or a potential full-time hire, what are some things that are really going to stand out on paper to you?
So I really want someone who understands that our goal is student learning, right? And so what you were talking about with our curriculum guides and the idea that a goal of a course is to help students achieve the student learning outcomes, not to get through a textbook. And I really think that's a fairly recent shift.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want someone who can articulate that understanding,
Mm-hmm.
that really it's not about me doing my show.
Yes.
It's about me helping students achieve the goals.
And you've been in higher education for a while, so let's, I don't know how many years, and if I did, I wouldn't share anyway. That would be
Multiple
unladylike.
decades, but
Yes.
anyway.
But let's imagine that you're looking for those items. What might they have on their CV or in a cover letter that would show you that that had occurred?
I would be looking for
And if you
language,
start thinking about these same things, I'll be asking you.
language that describes student assessment
Okay.
and alignment of assessment to the course goals or the learning outcomes. If they have evidence of that, potentially through the way they outline that in their syllabus for students, I think that would be a really valuable piece of evidence to include,
Mhm.
maybe a portfolio that would go along with the CV.
Mhm.
Any development of course work that they've done, so writing a curriculum guide or changing the modality of a class, because I think when you start to think about a class from a different modality, you also have to think about the way you're presenting information has to change. And again, the focus is how do I then engage students in that process?
I love that. When we come back, so I can say something. Laura.
I'm not a hiring manager. That's
What's your administrative job?
I do the onboarding process
Oh,
from the process, but I don't pick the people. Once they're picked and chosen, then I gather all the.
are you in HR?
Pass it. Oh, what?
Are you in HR?
No, I'm just a coordinator for the NNU online program.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so do you review and sit on any of the committees? If you're not the hiring manager, are you on selection committees?
No.
Okay. Do you have any great ideas that you'd like to share with us?
I just would love to know, even just the process of onboarding.
Okay.
An easier way to do it, because it seems like a very long process.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get to that, I promise, before my time's over, I hope. You kind of reminded me, because I'm passionate about this. Any other hiring managers in here? John, you're a hiring manager. So what would you look for on a CV or a curriculum guide that would make you want to hire somebody who's an adjunct in a full-time position? How would they stand out?
I think being able to communicate just the idea that they understand the student audience.
Mhm.
Because I think the content you can figure out, but it's actually having those relationships with students that matters. And when you are in a position where you're counting classes or things like that, it kind of gets lost a little bit, or it can get lost. But just that being able to articulate that in some way. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like necessarily on a CV, but certainly be in a teaching statement or
Teaching philosophy.
Yeah.
Or through some student evaluations, where you can see that strong connection.
That,
like that.
And innovative practices, I think, being willing to try things out that maybe aren't are less than 5 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to ask a question from the administrators. Is it good or not good to like submit copies of your student evaluations with a resume application?
I think it's good. Marilyn O'Malley from Boise State School of Nursing, and I know with hiring part-time adjunct faculty, we do pass them to submit if they have it. So a couple of examples of student evaluations.
Oh, so you actually asked them. Are you allowed to redact anything in it, or?
It's just no, but it's good evidence from a student perspective.
I love that. That's great. Thank you for
Do you
sharing
prefer
that.
they just select any year they want, or like just like the most recent semester, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and we typically say within the last year.
It's not like the one from 1997 that was really stellar.
Yes, exactly.
I was just gonna say, I don't look at anything that's not asked for in the request, so that I'm considering the same material
You
for
don't
everyone.
look at it.
Yeah, so like for our full-time hires in particular, people will sometimes submit things we don't ask for, and I don't distribute that to the selection committee because I'm there. And I don't look at it, because I don't want that bias either. So
You don't ask for that.
Correct. We don't specifically ask for a student evaluation, but it's not the only thing that we get that's not really asked for. So I would probably recommend not submitting something that's not asked for, because realistically, from an HR perspective, we shouldn't be considering anything that's not the same for every candidate.
Yes.
Yeah, I have
Your
a
cover
question.
letter.
Oh, Joy Palmer, English Chair, College of Western Idaho.
So if a cover letter is not requested, then that would not be something that you would look at?
So we request cover letters. And I would say like a cover letter and a resume or CV, depending on the position, are always.
Okay, because most of them don't typically say cover letter, but I do include it anyway, so. that's-
I don't think a cover letter is ever going to be a problem, to my knowledge. I think it's more the ancillary materials. And not having a cover letter certainly hurts.
I
A
think
lot.
the other, the way that I suggest, I come out of a corporate communication background though. So I'm always thinking like when people are applying for a position or moving from adjunct to full-time where you want to change, that's your only opportunity to sell yourself, right? Or promote yourself. And we're really uncomfortable as educators typically doing that because we're educators, because we serve other people. We're not usually, okay, I toot my horn. Yeah, Joyce looking at me like.
Huh?
I'm
Oh,
just
no,
kidding.
my name is weird. I'm
Oh,
really looking at you.
I guess just looking at me like, yeah, Michelle toots her horn every single day. No, so that is the time. And one of the ways I also suggest is in your cover letter, you can let them know what your student rankings are and incidents where students said that you went outside the box and that you were creative or you inspired them, and let them know that those are available if they'd like to review them. So those would be some communication strategies I would use without bogging down with additional attachments in your writing. So let me move past that. I guess my big point about this is if you're an adjunct faculty, you need to look for opportunities to either engage with your CTL, Teresa's here, if you're from Boise State, right? Or if you're at NMU, engaging with your CTL. Do you call it CTL? What's your organization that provides training to your adjuncts called at NMU?
Our instructional design team actually.
Okay. So reach out to them and say, what type of opportunities do you have today in 2019, if you have not become online certified or you do not know how to deliver effective and creative online courses, you need to get on that. Because students today require that. We're moving to the generation Z, right? Y'all get that? They're in their classes now. So even the millennials are starting to age up a little bit. So we have all these students who are so familiar with computers. Our commencement speaker tomorrow, I've been coaching her for CWI. And she says, yeah, my PowerPoint teacher was my 13-year-old daughter. So we all get that, right? Wink, wink. But it's that same type of thing. Think of not just sitting back and saying, I have these wonderful graduate degrees. Those are just the minimum requirements to get a full-time position. Now you have to say, how can I prepare myself? How can I take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and engage in as much professional development like you are here today? What can I do to volunteer at that school knowing I'm not going to get paid so that I can increase the things that I've done on my CV? It's just like any other career, only even more political and fewer full-time positions. So I really want to encourage you to really invent yourself as you go along, make those connections. A lot of times your chairs or the hiring managers or whoever schedules for you are doing 50 different things all the time. And it's not that they don't care about you, love you, respect you, want to have you on their team, but a lot of times they don't have enough capacity to be a touchstone all the time. So without being obnoxious and being whiny, reach out and ask for things. Or just say, do you have anything that I could take off of your plate that would make your life easier? If somebody says that to me, I'm like, you are my new favorite rock star. Like, really, you're gonna do that for me? Terrific. So I want to get to the hiring process just to make sure that you have the information. Read this onboarding on your own. A couple of things I want to say. Even full-time faculty get even more than this, but this is my typical onboarding, okay, for an adjunct faculty. They've gone through the online platform, and I've interviewed them typically over the phone first to do a screening. And then after I screen them, I have at least 2 other full-time faculty on my team watch a teaching demonstration that's at least 15 minutes long, and have a quick interview. And the reason is I think adjunct faculty are as important as full-time faculty, and they need to mesh with the team. And a lot of times my teammates will see things that are great in that person that maybe I don't see, or they may see some warning signs that I don't see. And so that's always a requirement. And the teaching demo to see how they can engage with people in the classroom. If they're extremely introverted, it's okay to be a calm person and be introverted. But it's not okay to be a calm teacher and be introverted for the most part, right? Because a lot of your students are introverts, and guess what you gotta do? Woohoo! Get them to public speak so they can communicate, and that takes a lot of work and coaching. So then I'm to that stage, right? And I've got them in my office. I've done the HR, I want to hire this person as an adjunct in the fall. And then I actually sit down with them with this list. And the only thing I don't have on here that I think is very important is tell them how they order a textbook for their class. I thought about that. And that the reason is COM 101, we order those through the chair position. Boise State does too, but Boise State and NNU hire adjuncts for a lot of classes where the adjunct's going to have to order the textbook. It varies from institution to institution, and it's really stressful when you get on the naughty list because you haven't done that. So make sure you tell them. So I try to imagine, here's Michelle Bennett back in 2007, and I have to navigate all of these things, right? And I haven't been in higher education. I've been a student in higher education, but I haven't been an employee. So what is the difference between a college and a school and a department? Which college am I under? Which school am I under? And which department am I under? Because I guarantee you they're going to get asked by students. And so we need to let them know who their structure is in their team. That I tell them, if you don't feel like I'm answering your questions and you need further resources, this is my supervisor. If you ever feel like I'm not there for you, I want you to go above my head and talk to my supervisor. I want to give them permission right away to do that. And I don't think it's ever happened, honestly. I mean, it's happened in a good way, but nobody's ever, at least that I'm aware of. Okay. I want to give them syllabi and schedule submission links. And when they say that, we have the curriculum guides at CWI, and in Blackboard, I have an organization in there that is my department. And I have a copy of the curriculum guide for every single one of our courses that has all the learning outcomes and sub-learning outcomes. I have 1 minute, I'm gonna go really fast. And so they can build their syllabus off of that. And then there's a place where they're gonna submit it to me in the formatting. So I tell them all this in orientation and know that they won't remember it all, but they have a cheat sheet that they can go back to. I'm gonna tell them where we do our outcome assessment alignments in Blackboard. I'm gonna tell them where they do their grading. Intermediate grading at CWI the first 2 weeks, let us know if we can disperse financial aid. So they have to do a lot of work there. Blackboard, where that occurs. When finals occur, how to find an academic calendar. We take it for granted that people can find our academic calendar. Trust me, it's not that easy. I've looked at NMU, BSU, and CWI before this presentation. Unless you're really specific and know what it's called, it's not easy to find. Make sure that they know how to find that. What happens if they're going to miss a class meeting? Is the world going to fall apart? Do you let them miss one a semester without affecting their paycheck? What are the consequences? How do they notify people? This is the time to tell them and have it in writing. I tell them where to locate their student rosters in every LMS or every college and university, they're different. Okay, tell them how to find their students' phone numbers and their names, so if they need to call them. What about display services? How do they deal with an accommodation if they get one? What are their parameters around that? How do they get to the testing center? What are the requirements if the student takes a test outside of their class? Let them know. If they have a conduct issue and they feel violated by a student or a student feels violated, what does that look like? Blackboards at CWI, they must have these components in their shell. Always have their grade book and these things. So I list them down there for them. I don't make them guess and go find 3 other instructors and say, can you help me? I don't know if this is right. And I don't want to look bad in front of my supervisor. So I'm not going to ask her. I want them to ask me. Even if I'm irritated, I don't show it. Even if I'm busy and I've got 5 other things on my plate, I try not to show it. Or I go down to Joy's office and scream with the door shut when I walk out. I tell them who they email if they need other people. And then on the back, this is really important. Before they leave my office that first day, I know I want every adjunct to get hybrid and online certified regardless. And so I usually start with hybrid certification and go to online. And I actually take them to our CTL site. I show them how to sign up. I print out the hybrid form. I sign that they're going to do it. And our internal mechanisms changed a little bit. And I know I'm 2 minutes past, I'm already. But Teresa can attest. I get you right into training and then online. Why? I have a better teacher if they're professionally developed on our team. Secondly, they're more versatile for our department because I have classes that are online, hybrid, and face-to-face, and Darren trains a lot of them. And Darren is amazing. I don't want them to just rely on me. I want them to have more people to rely on. Because if they go a lot of places, guess what? They're going to be better instructors, right? And then finally, they're all assigned a mentor, adjunct or full-time. One of my full-time, and if they're super busy, I'll find a really seasoned adjunct who rocks. And I'll say, will you mentor this person for the year? That means at least once a month they're touching base when they can't figure out how to do something, or they have a question about the speech requirements or something, they can get a hold of you. They can always ask me, but I'm not always available. I'm not like right there I have 29 adjuncts on my team and full-time, 5 full-time faculty, and I teach 15 credits a semester. I'm not always there, right, to ask them. So I want to ask them to ask me. The end. I'm over time. I hope that gave you some things to think about. Sorry, I went over.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Always over prepare, right?